Redditors who quit a steady job to follow a passion. What's your story? What did you leave? What did you start? And how has it turned out? An acquaintance I met worked for a corporate law firm. He was tired of the workload and quit. He went to Alaska to be a fisherman for a year. 2 years ago he opened up a body shop where he converts school buses into RVs and now makes almost as much as he did being a lawyer. Edit. He worked there for 10 years and lived a lifestyle you would expect someone to live that as a teacher. He made upwards of $250K a year after taxes. He used his money to start his business and keep it alive. He calls it his hobby. I quit my full-time job in radio to be a stand-up comic. So far, I've moved back into my mom's place. Work at a grocery store to pay rent. I'm a student at Second City. And so far I've made $40 telling jokes. Hey, can I borrow $20? I was a store manager at GameStop. It was terrible. I decided I'd rather make games than sell them. So I quit with no real plan. After about a month of being unemployed, I got a customer service job at Blizzard. Through that job I met J. Allen Brack and decided I wanted to do what he did, producer. Now I work at BioWare as a development manager. Everything went better than expected. I went to art school. Ended up working in IT support for 5 years. It was a fun, interesting, challenging job, and it paid well, allowing me to live up my 20s. A lot of my company's clients were design firms. And so I spent a lot of time around designers. And always felt sad that I didn't make it as an artist or designer. I started teaching myself 3D modeling as part of a side project. And I got pretty good at it. A few years ago I made the jump to working as a freelance 3D modeler. I've found a specific niche within the field, which is modeling vegetation and landscapes. I get a good amount of steady work from landscape architects, city planners, and architecture firms. It's been hard leaving the security of steady paychecks, benefits, paid vacation, etc. I have to supply my own disability, health insurance, and the scariest time is when there's no new projects on the table. Still, I've survived and even thrived over the past 2 years. And so I am starting to feel secure in knowing that more work will show up. The hardest part is that it's all up to me. Every dollar I earn comes from actual hours of work. No more goofing off and still collecting a paycheck. The days are unstructured and I have to make myself do things like not work in PJs until mid-afternoon. I get envious when I see people come home from their jobs and I know that their work is over, while mine is always there. And there's always some project I could work on for a few hours. Client management is AB as well. I write a lot more emails than I would have expected. The best part is that I've never once looked at the clock at 3:00 p.m. and thought, 2 more hours until I'm done. I enjoy absolutely every moment of my work. And it's addictive. I give myself a little happy hour on Fridays and work while drinking beer as I close out the last day of the work week. I can even decide that Friday is a day off if I want to. Or Monday for that matter. The path I've chosen is as hard as it is rewarding. And I'm not sure I'd recommend it to someone who isn't prepared to spend countless hours just getting started from nothing. But I am mostly glad I decided to strike out on my own. In 2009 I felt like my work was contributing nothing to the world, other than helping some stockholders' dividends increase. So I decided to give up my corporate job of 10 years and go somewhere abroad to work with children. I found a small organization that funds one small orphanage and school in Rwanda. So I offered to volunteer there for 6 months. I donated everything I owned to a battered women's shelter, pulled out everything from my savings and retirement and headed out to Rwanda. A month after arriving I found the local staff was misusing funds and mistreating the kids. So I wrote back to the donors in the US to inform them of what I was seeing. They asked me if I was willing to take over managing the program. I had no previous experience running an organization, managing people or working with children, but I saw this as an opportunity to really make a small difference in the world. So I accepted. Now, 3 years later, I am the executive director of the project and have been elected to the board of directors. Early in 2010 I met another volunteer from another nearby orphanage. She was from London. We became friends and eventually fell in love. Now we work together running the program and we have nearly 100 children who look at us as their parents. Together we make very little money but we are very happy with our lives. Running an orphanage in Rwanda. Hell, just living here is very hard. The poverty is heartbreaking. The government is difficult to work with, and trying to keep our little charity from going under due to lack of funds are all issues that cause endless stress. But seeing one of our boys, who when he came from the streets was filthy, malnourished and hopeless, change into a clean, happy, hopeful child who works his butt off in school is worth every trial and tribulation. After college I worked at Apple Computer's headquarters. In 2008, when the economy tanked, I had to get a job at a deli. I worked there for years. While I was there I started making these little films with my flip cam. Then I saved for a $400 Nikon P500 so I could make a music video for my band. It turned out really well. So I saved every penny and bought some editing software, some lights, and started doing video jobs on the side. Every morning I would wake up at about 5 a.m. and tackle the Adobe Classroom in a book series learning After Effects, Premiere, Photoshop and Illustrator. Then I spent 6 months saving for a real camera, the Canon HFG10. Then, right after the new year, with a nice portfolio of demo work, all done before the sun came up every day, and about $1,000 in the bank, I started working on my own production company full-time. I started with low-paying jobs, but I made sure that every day I was doing something. I did a ton of jobs in my first year and got all my bills paid. I did weddings, birthday parties, tons of music videos, and corporate spots. I even was contracted to work on a few projects for major companies like Chevron and Del Monte. I was able to buy a new camera, the Canon 5D Mark E, along with some new audio gear. I created great relationships with my local camera rental place, where I rent all my big lights and extra gear. It's been a year since I quit the deli. I didn't make a ton of money, but I made enough to pay all my bills, get new gear, buy my lady a new MacBook and an engagement ring. I have a business license and have to pay a ton of taxes. But my worst day doing this is still better than my best day at the deli. One of my best friends graduated from college as an econ major. Soon after he was hired as a controller for a large real estate development company. But he really wasn't very happy entering numbers in a spreadsheet all day, even though the job was relatively easy and stress-free. His real true passion was basketball, so he decided to pursue it professionally. One day he quit and took the only job he could find in the industry with his experience, which was selling shoes at Nike Town. About a year later he got really lucky and landed an unpaid internship with an NBA team. He worked hard and eventually got hired as a scouting assistant, then a scout. Then, after several years of hard work, he made scouting director. He has now worked for the same team for almost 2 decades and was just recently promoted to VP of operations. I spent a good part of my 20s working at a pizza place. It was an after-bar type place, which meant loud music, lots of drunks, parties that started when we closed 4 a.m. and raged until we opened 11 a.m. Drugs, close friendships, hilarious incidents like a bum barfing on a cop's shoes while singing AC/DC, getting invited to private parties, etc. Basically it was an amazing job. But the more I made pizza, the more I loved it, and wanted to explore it as a culinary art form. The realization that my skills were being wasted came fast and hard. So I quit and opened up my own pizza place. Best decision of my life. I work hard, I play hard, and I get to spend my days thinking up delicious and unique pizza. The last one I made I designated Christmas in the trailer park. Instead of tomato sauce, I use gravy, cover in sliced turkey breast, stuffing and onions, and ham. Serve with a side of cranberry sauce. Yeah. I was the top producer in a large industrial supply sales organization. Big money. Great perks. But didn't like my lack of control over policies and direction of the company. I'm not a whiner, and when it felt intolerable, I left and formed my own similar but smaller company. It's been 20 years and I never stopped questioning my decision. I don't really like the control that I resented not having. I've learned that I'm a better follower than a leader. My income can swing drastically from month to month. Work is on my mind 24/7. Every problem, from a major audit to a leaky faucet, is my problem. I no longer have the option of quitting and doing something else. Of course there are offsetting positives, but the grass is not necessarily greener on the other side. July of last year I left a computer science PhD program to teach myself game design and Android development. I released my first game, in August of this year. And updates have continued since. Making Cointreau was the most rewarding experience of my professional career. However, I've been living off savings, and my girlfriend's generosity, since I started. And it hasn't exactly been a big moneymaker. My girlfriend has started looking into graduate school in public health and we expect her income to shrink for a while. So I'm looking for regular employment as a software engineer to pick up the financial slack. I intend to continue working on Cointreau and designing other games, either during my own time while employed or after building up some savings again. My advice is follow your passion. But that's easier to do when you've got some money lying around. Keep your options open for traditional work, either part-time or as an emergency recourse. I was studying software engineering in the university. I didn't like it that much, but I didn't hate it either. And I studied really hard. I was looking for a job for a year while studying. But the job market in my city almost didn't exist at the time. And nobody was eager to hire a part-time guy. Neither internships were available. After a year or so I got the steady job during my last year of college. I was super excited and terrified at the same time. I thought I'd get fired after the first fail. Turned out the job was okay. But I didn't like it that much. I didn't manage to force myself to like it. And sometimes I really felt out of place. For example, the best vacation for my coworkers was sitting in front of a computer for 2 weeks. So I decided to quit and find something different. Since I loved foreign languages and had a second major as a translator, I gave it a try and started freelancing. The family was against the idea. They wanted me to have a steady job. But I really loved translations. Because I learned something new from my texts every day and was paid for it. To make my income steady and increase my chances at the job market, I decided to learn a second foreign language and to do it quickly. I saved a 6-month salary and went to a Spanish language school to Spain for 3 months. I studied Spanish for 2 months before going there and I felt like I was more or less ready. But first couple of weeks were a disaster. I hardly understood everything outside classes. So I started to study as hard as you can imagine. Even Chinese and Japanese students were amazed how fast I was progressing and became surprisingly fluent at the end of the studies. I got back home. But Spanish was not too popular at the job market and things were tough. But after 6 months of waiting I got the jackpot. I was offered to translate a popular science magazine from Spanish. The employer was amazed by the quality of my work and offered me the next job, translation of popular mathematics books from Spanish. A whole lot of work for a whole lot of money. All of this while working from home. And the best part is that not only I learned something interesting every day, but everything I studied earlier became useful. From the notion of the limit of a function to integrals, binary codes, etc. As I make enough money and don't need an office, I go to Spain for 2 weeks this month. Then I'll head to South America. Then I'll make a 5-month trip across the U.S. I quit my retail job to play online poker for a living. There were good and bad parts, but overall it was a great experience. I did it for 3.5 years, then the DOJ shut down the major online poker sites. All in all, everything turned out pretty good. There were some stressful times, but I had a lot of fun and a lot of great experiences. These types of threads normally end up being nothing but a list of success stories because the people that it didn't work out for aren't really going to talk about it. I'll throw out one for the other side. I haven't left my corporate job, but I've witnessed a lot people in my industry do it. I work in a pretty niche job market. It involves knowing one particular piece of software really well that also happens to be old and crappy. A lot of the people that know it are getting old and retiring. It's used by investment banks. As a result, there's few people that know it and we all get paid well. I personally know of 6 people that got totally fed up with it does suck, and left for their passion. There were 2 attempted chefs, an attempted startup, an attempted record label, a guy who wanted to go to Thailand and work as a Muay Thai fighter coach. They were all super happy when they left. And they all came back in under 2 years because they weren't making money doing the other things. I'm not saying people shouldn't go for it when they have something they want to do. It's just quite often hard to find a thing to go for that will actually involve you making money. I think about leaving quite regularly. I'd love to leave my job. But I don't know of anything that I would really enjoy doing that I could realistically expect to be paid for. Quit my job. 2 weeks later I was living on a converted Bluebird schoolbus traveling North America playing music. From Maine to Alaska and back twice. Had a great smutrock band and made a living the following 4 years warping minds. Band breaks up. I was poor to start with and now the same. Wouldn't change a thing. I had a great job doing PR for a library. I was making more money than I ever had before and all around loved my job. It was a difficult decision. But I decided to go travel instead. I left my job, used all of my savings, and moved to Chile. I studied at a local university to improve my Spanish and took a few months to backpack through Chile, Argentina, Peru, and Uruguay. I'm back in the United States now working the most boring job ever. But I wouldn't change a thing. On my trip, I met some of the greatest people in the world. And the whole adventure changed my life.